They had real sand and real beaches, beach backgrounds, and it was really nice.
Very, very nice.
I've been wearing this all weekend. Makes everything yellow. Love it.
Yellow is good, especially in the winter times. So,
Well, the plan was to be in Miami, but yeah.
but that didn't happen.
No. They brought the beach to me. They had real sand and real beaches.
All righty then. This is in the regular groups. Let me open up in the members group. That didn't happen. There we go. Okay, so now I'm able to see everywhere. And we will just jump in and get started. People are going to be joining all over the various social medias today. So hello, everybody. Welcome to the 10K Project. I am Cherie, founder of the organization, or co-founder, I should say, of the organization. Our goal is to build the largest community of Black investors who are funding in alternative investments, especially and including potentially, hopefully, prayerfully, Black businesses. So the idea is if 10,000 people come together, put $100 each into a business, that's $1 million. The community can start funding its own businesses, profiting from its own innovation, creating its own jobs, and building Black wealth. We are in the process of applying to the federal government. In order to be able to do this, you have to have a special license in order to be able to do it. This is through the Securities and Exchange Commission and through another regulatory organization called FINRA. So we have officially gotten our check mark from the SEC. We are finalizing our application with the attorney. Literally, Tawana just sent a note to the attorney for a final viewing of the application before we hit send. So it's very, very close for that application to go through. And then she and I are going to have to go in front of the government and plead our case. So pray for us if you believe in the power of prayer. And if you're not a part of the 10K Project and you want to support us, the best thing that you can do is become a member, the10kproject.com. We cannot guarantee we will be approved. However, we hope that you will get benefit from all the other things that we're doing. And if and when we're approved, that'll be a cherry on top for all of us, because that is the big direction that we are going in today. So I want to welcome everyone here today to talk about Extreme Killer 3D writing course by one of our 10K members, Miss Monique Lisa. Virtual hand clap, snap for you. So you are have been in Hollywood for many, many years. And one of the things we talked about was the fact that we need to own more of what we're doing in Hollywood. And one of the ways that we do it is by becoming writers, owning our scripts, things like that. I know you have a bunch of things that you're talking about today with regards to artists and playwrights and filmmakers. So why don't you start off telling a little bit about yourself, what your vision is, what you're trying to achieve, and we'll take it from there.
Okay, awesome. Awesome. Well, first, Cherie, thank you and everyone involved with the 10K Project. I am honored to even be here because I know the importance of it. And with that said, yes, my name is Monique Lisa. I have been in the industry, New York and LA, for over 30 years. I know I look 25, but I've been in the industry over 30
What
years.
you talking about? You look 24. You better wear that.
Yes, I like this. I like this. And I started out at the age of 7. I started writing and producing in my parents' backyard. And if anyone knows me, they know that I just kind of kidnapped all of the neighborhood kids and put them in my projects. And that was my start in terms of production. And I went to school, went to the original high school performing arts for dance. And we had to take acting, which I had already had, little taste of. And that is where I really caught the acting bug for performing arts. And from there, producing, I just started writing and producing off Broadway projects, film projects, television projects. A lot of it's so funny, this weekend when they did my birthday party, someone had made a collage or a montage of all of my early movies. And I was just like, not mortified, but when you see yourself at 13, 14, 15 in movies and, they have these clips and they put it in with your birthday video, it's just like, okay, so I just know how important it is, and it always has been for us to be represented properly in the industry. And I have a lot of friends that are in the industry that are on the front line in terms of in front of the camera, and they'll tell you they don't really have a lot of control over just what they can say or not say. It's based on the script. And if we're not writing the scripts, then we can't control the narrative. We have to kind of find a way to still allow ourselves to be represented the right way, but we're still kind of, we don't have that creative control. So for me, it was important for me to produce projects where we're seen and not just as these stereotypical roles. In the early days, it was just a maid, butler, and not that those roles weren't important, kept food on the table. But what I found was that I know that there was a big controversy in the 80s when a lot of sitcoms came out, like Family Matters and The Cosby Show, and everyone said, "How realistic is that?" So
Yeah, people said it wasn't realistic. Yeah.
and how could you say that if you have things that professional, you know, they have resumes that are professional? Why would you say it's unrealistic? And it's only because they wanted to keep our image as thugs and people just running the streets and going to jail. So when they control that narrative, they control the view worldwide. It's not just here in the States, but worldwide. So if you see someone of color, you'll clutch your purse because you assume that from the movies that you saw, that that's who we really are. And in reality, we are the inventors of most of the things that are used every day. We are pretty much the people who created the golf tee, the iron, the brush, the comb, the ironing board, the street light. I have a friend whose great grandfather was responsible for the x-ray machine in the airport. So we have contributed tremendously. Our contributions are tremendous. And in the film industry, I was reading recently about a woman who in the early 1930s, her name escapes me, but in the early 1930s, she was a director. She was directing film in the
Fantastic.
1930s. I only knew about Oscar Michaud, who's Haitian. He's from Haiti, but he has a Haitian American background, and he was in 1932, and he was directing film. So we've always contributed in some way or another, and we don't always get the credit, or we most likely don't get the credit until someone reveals it. One of my biggest things that I talk about was how come Hidden Figures, which came out under Disney, was hidden for so long.
Yes.
The contributions to NASA, why was that hidden? And they show in the movie there were excess of 100 women of color in helping with the calculating, and even when the mainframe came in, the machine, what's her name, I could see her face, the woman who was responsible for helping for the calculations, not Taraji P. Henson's character,
Octavia Spencer.
Octavia Spencer. Octavia Spencer, that role where she just took it on upon herself to check out the machine to make sure it was calculating properly, because she knew that could be the end of their role in terms of calculating. So we have just played a big part, and I can't think of any industry where we've not had a major role in, and the entertainment especially,
Yeah.
especially. So yeah.
So you mentioned quite a few things. I want to go back to a couple of things with regards to media and portrayals and things like that. The first thing is when Hidden Figures came out and I saw it, I was in awe because it never occurred to me that there were Black women, Black people, period, much less Black women. And so many of them doing critical things with regards to NASA and, going to the moon and all. It just never occurred to me to even think that way.
Right.
The second thing is you mentioned Family Matters and The Cosby Show. And I grew up middle class Black, so seeing Family Matters, it's like, those are all my friends, that's what
Exactly.
their families, and,
Exactly.
and all of a sudden so I love Good Times. Don't get me wrong. Like, I
Right, right,
love
right,
Banks,
right,
Evans, in Florida,
right,
but
right,
we needed a greater representation, because there were families like that, but there
right,
were also families like the Cosbys, or like Family
right.
Matters and the Winslows.
See,
The
I'm
third
glad you
is,
said that though. I want to interject.
okay.
I'm glad you said that because that's what was so strange to me that I would
Mhm,
hear them
mhm.
say that that's not realistic when that's what if you grew up middle class, that's
Mhm.
what you
That's what you
knew,
saw. Yeah.
even if you didn't see it on TV.
Mhm.
It took me a minute to kind of get used to Good Times because I didn't even know what Kool-Aid was. If you come from a Caribbean household, you don't drink Kool-Aid. You
Mhm.
drink iced tea or whatever. So yes, definitely. And you were saying number three.
Yeah, so my third thing, which is most important, is I also grew up during a different world. And the numbers of Black young people that decided to go to an HBCU, go to college, period, number one,
After that
but
show.
number two, go to an
Yeah,
HBCU because of a different world, were
exactly.
astronomical. One day I'm going to look for the actual stats, but
Yes.
there are there was a lot of movement into
Yes.
young Black kids going to an HBCU because of a different world. Now I was younger,
Hmm.
so
Hmm.
a different world ended by the time I got to college. But
Right.
um,
It was
it
an
is amazing
inspiration.
to see, imagery and what happened. Because I've gone back since and watched the all 6 seasons of A Different World. They're on Amazon Prime right now, and I
Right.
also watched the behind the scenes. I did that last year.
Right.
It wasn't until Debbie Allen took the
Exactly.
reins in season 2 that A Different
Exactly.
World became what it was. Even watching back at season 1, I'm like,
Mhm. Yes.
what
It was
is this? We
different.
were watching this? And
Yes.
then when season
Yes.
2 happened and you saw the
Yes.
shift, and this goes back to what you were saying
Yes.
about, being around the writing table, having the directors, having people,
Exactly.
even the characters like Jasmine Guy and Kadeem Hardison giving
Yes.
their input, and the woman that played Jaleesa, Dawn Lewis, giving her input.
Yes.
And she wrote the song for A Different
She
World.
sang it
Yeah,
too.
she
Yeah. Yeah.
well, I thought like Aretha Franklin sang it in
They both
seasons.
sang it.
Okay,
They both sang it, but that was Dawn
okay.
Lewis. She
That was
she
Dawn
actually
Lewis.
sang
Okay.
when she wrote it, she sang
Mhm.
it. So they
She's
wanted to give Aretha Franklin the opportunity to sing it for when we saw it as a commercial, but
mhm.
that was Dawn Lewis because
Okay. All right.
that's my era. I auditioned for the Cosby Show for Lisa Bonet's part. So that's how
Really?
far back I go. Yes, I was there
Wow.
during all of that. And the great thing about it was that when you knew something like that was coming, whether you got the part or not, because it was tight, it was difficult. Everyone went for that because that's another thing. When a great role comes up, you've got 2,000 people of color going for one role.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's going to be a thing where now you're causing competition amongst us as opposed to having enough material so that we don't feel like we have to compete. Because I saw
Mm-hmm.
a recent interview with Nia Long, and she said that she was always going up against Jada Pinkett Smith.
Mm-hmm.
She said, do they want the dark skinned spicy girl or the light skinned spicy girl? And I went, whoa, because we weren't raised like that. You if you were black, you were black. It
Yeah.
didn't matter if you were lighter or darker. And then I realized that when I got into high school and college, that yes, there was a differentiation. People did that. But I grew up in an Italian neighborhood, middle class Italian neighborhood with Jamaicans and Italians. Can you imagine? And we were just black to them. So it wasn't like, oh, you're a light skinned black, we like you better. It wasn't kind of like that. So I learned that was a mindset that some people held on to.
Mm-hmm.
Long put it in perspective. So she always went up against Jada Pinkett Smith on roles. And that's a problem because Gabrielle Union, I heard her in an interview and she said that she sheltered herself. She kind of put herself in a silo because everyone was her competition. So if she was going up for something, she did not speak to the other actors. She did not interact with them. She did not do social things because they were her competition. And it's just sad because she apologized for that.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the way the industry wanted it.
Mm-hmm.
It wanted for us to, pit against each other and not feel as though there was room for all of us. And that's why I loved working on my productions. When I pulled away from everyone else's productions and I did mine, I made room for people. You got the training, whether it was vocal training, the acting training, you got the training. And however we were able to pull it all together before a show, that's what we did. But you didn't feel like, oh, if I don't do this, I'm going to lose my job to this person or that person. No, we made room. And that was so important for us to make room for each other. There's a Jamaican saying that says, where dogs are not invited, bones are not provided. And that's key. When you feel
If
like
dogs are not invited.
where dogs are not invited, bones are not provided. So that means that if you go somewhere and they did not provide or prepare for you, there's nothing there for you.
Right.
And that's the way the industry has been. They're not going to make room for something that they did not plan on having there. And so we have to be able to make room for ourselves. Like there's lots of crowdfunding projects, but are there any specifically for us where we're not competing against people who already know they have it in the bag? They already have it in the bag. They know they're going to be chosen, whether it's nepotism or if it's a smaller company of a bigger company that says, okay, go for it. That's just the way it's going to be. So we have to make room. There's enough that would try to come against us even in the entertainment industry, where we really need to make room for each other and for ourselves.
Yeah. So Veronica is saying, as long as we are against each other, we can't focus on who's holding the strings. Thank you for your
Exactly.
contribution to the arts. And I can definitely agree with that. So it is about us working together and us finding commonality and saying, okay, this is our goal. This is where we're going to be. And y'all know how I am right now. I'm on my 25-year plan, right?
Yes.
What can we do in a generation to really shift things? And I believe within a generation, we really can. So I have two questions for you, and I didn't want to forget them. So that's why I wrote them down. The first is going back to our example of Hidden Figures in a Different World and the Winslows, etc. Now we have social media.
Yes.
Okay, take a step back. For the longest time, a lot of young people only saw success with entertainers and sports figures, right? Because that was all they saw on TV for the most part. That was super successful, right?
Right.
So now you have social media, for example, and now you have, people like Issa Rae and others who are, starting off with their independent YouTube channels, and, people can make movies now and control the entire production process with an iPhone. Literally, you can do everything with an iPhone.
Exactly.
My question to you is twofold. Number one is the business of entertainment, because you've been involved with the business of entertainment. You have crowdfunded for projects, etc. Talk to us about the future of the business of entertainment, and you as a Black woman who want to see not only Black writers eat, but directors, producers, etc. What are some of the things that you're seeing in the entertainment industry that we should be on the lookout for?
A perfect example, and I'm glad you mentioned Issa Rae, because a lot of people may not know she started off with her YouTube channel with the Awkward Black Girl. What I see that could potentially be very successful for us and come down the pike is us establishing businesses that are specifically targeting our generations to come. If you look at the model of Disney, Disney started with children, and you were raised with Disney. He started at 3, 4, 5. Now that they have Kid Disney, Radio Disney. If we can start with where we are and have productions and have things that are targeted to the kids and go up, we can go and do a lot. One person in particular, Jordan Peele, who's a director, he took $4 million of his own, $4.5 million of his own money, and he produced Get Out. Get Out exceeded $100 million. He didn't have to pay anyone back, and he did not have to ask permission in Hollywood for the right to do his own stuff. And so if we're pulling our funds together, like the 10K project, if we're putting our monies together, We can pick out the directors who have these reputations. One underrated director is Robert Townsend. Robert Townsend has been doing so
So
much,
much.
so
Yes.
much, and he's met with so much opposition, because I remember when he did his The Parenthood, the TV show. Another thing, oh, it's unrealistic. Why is it unrealistic to see us in positive roles? A two-parent household with kids that have everyday challenges like everyone else. So for us, it's really being able to pull together companies that have true representation, not Black fronted. I say this all the time, not Black fronted, Black owned. Because just because you get a Black director does not mean that the people who are behind the scenes, the investors, the executive producers, it does not mean that they are all of color. It just means that they put the best person in a position to make the movie or the television show or whatever the program is, to have the flavor. Because a lot of times they want our rhythm, but they don't want our blues. You know, they want that rhythm. They'll get the lips and they'll do all that stuff, but they don't want the trials and tribulations that come with it. So I think the future for us is to make sure that we get all age groups so that you can grow up. One thing I love about Tyler Perry, a friend of mine, that's a whole nother story. A friend of mine is who actually put Tyler Perry on the map. But one thing I love about it is that you grew with him as an audience. You grew with him. He used email. He maximized email because that was a new technology, and you grew with him. Patti LaBelle, another person. You never see Patti LaBelle advertised anywhere, but she's always sold out. Why? Because they're using the technology to get to her people. So if we use platforms that are directly, almost like a streamline right to us, you know, we use Zoom, we use YouTube, we use all these different things. But if we are able to put together companies that are targeting our preschool kids, our school age kids, our junior high school kids, our high school, if you're getting them, and then you have your Gen Z, you have your millennial, you have your Gen X, you have your baby boomers. If you're targeting all of those age groups and all of the different genres of entertainment that we like, we can go far. We can go far. We can have our own YouTube. We can have our own platforms. There's so many channels out there now where you can have your own television show. You don't have to rely, and I think that's what scares Hollywood, and that's what happened to the record industry. The record industry. I mean, it started just before Napster. You know, people weren't getting paid for their music. So for us, we don't need to get a record deal. We don't need to have a Hollywood contract to do films. You can take your iPhone, do a film, and you're good. You're good. Make sure you have the right people who can bring it up to the industry scale. Make sure it's industry scale, because a lot of times you can do a great movie, but if the audio is horrible, you can't use it. But industry scale. I was at the Martha's Vineyard African American Film Festival, and one of the young men at the time when we were doing a film, he shot his film on an iPad, and he actually won for the American Airlines. It was an American Airlines award for his film, and it was just an iPad. So we're not limited now in terms of having to wait on someone to provide camera equipment, lighting equipment. You can go into any store and get a ring light or a little LED light. There's so much we can do. The limits have been taken off. It's now being able to control where the content goes and who is providing the content. Because if someone else is providing the content and then we're just giving it away for free, because that's YouTube, you're just giving away the content for free, and then they're getting big major dollars
They're capitalizing.
to capitalize on it.
Yeah.
So we have to find a way to keep our own. We have to find a way to keep our own. One way we can do it is definitely there's a station. It's called Quality TV. Quality TV. It's African American. Well, it's African owned, African American ran, and it's all Black movies, from biographical, autobiographical, biographical, entertainment, every genre you could think of. So if we're owning the platforms and we are directing people to the platform, we can do a lot. We can do a lot. I know what I've done with a little bit, with a little budget. I've done really, really, really well. So I've taken that into consideration, and I think our future is dependent upon what we control and what we allow to be controlled around us. Definitely.
So I like your idea also of, having generational specific content as well, because one of the other things that I was going to bring up was, teaching kids using different types of media. So
Mhm.
one of the big things that I started to hear about and research were these hip hop science shows, which and of course I'm like, yeah, that makes perfect sense to me. But like, you have the regular science shows that we used to have back in the 80s and 90s, but now the kids are doing hip hop science shows, and now you've got video production where I saw a couple of young Black farmers teaching kids about agriculture using hip hop, using
Yeah.
rhythm, and poetry, and they had the beat behind them, and they were like, you do this and you do this. And um, so we are starting to see niching is what
Yes.
I'm saying.
Right.
Politically, we're starting to see niche. We're starting to see it in every facet of life. You're
That's
going
right.
to start having a lot more niched
Right.
areas of the
Right.
world where
Right.
you go to get certain types of content and things like that. And it is also interesting to see how people are starting to monetize their content.
They are.
um,
Yes.
they're starting to, get out of, like you were saying, the big deals. We just
Hmm.
recently saw Joe Button, the Joe Button podcast, get
Hmm.
out of the big deal with
Hmm. Hmm.
Spotify and talk all about that. We've
Hmm.
seen, I just have to use this person as an example because I don't have a better one, but Taylor Swift wanted
Yeah.
to buy
Hmm.
her masters,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
you know, they told her
Hmm.
no, and then they ended
Hmm.
up
Hmm.
selling her masters to somebody else. So
Hmm.
a lot
Hmm.
of artists are starting to see the lack of control, and our artists had it worse. I mean, back in the
We've
Motown
always.
days and all of that, it was infinitely harder, and it's still
Yeah.
hard. Like these
Yeah.
days, they have these 360-degree,
Hmm.
deals, whereas
That's right.
before, the record labels would just make money on the albums that were sold. Now
Hmm.
they make
Hmm.
money on every penny that that artist
Exactly.
puts in. So now, artists are thinking, hey, I don't want to sign with the record label. I'd
Right.
rather just make
Right.
my music and figure out how to sell a few 100,000 copies, and be a
And
version
this
of the
is
Grateful Dead.
well, this is true, and this is the power of what Nipsey Hussle did.
Yes.
He read a book, and basically he decided that he's going to sell his own product. No different from MC Hammer, no
Hmm.
different from so many other artists. But in one day, he sold 1,000 of his mixtapes for $100. He made $100,000 in one day. He
Hmm.
just went throughout the hood and he did that. So it's not the lack of resources, but it's being resourceful with what you have. You
Right.
have to be resourceful. I think for all of us, if we had a blueprint or a plan or something that we could follow to the T, we probably do much, much better. I look at the story about Capitol Records. Capitol Records was nothing until they signed Nat King Cole. They were absolutely nothing. They didn't even have that landmark building in LA. They literally, like Nat King Cole, brought in that money. But as soon as they got all of that money, brought Frank Sinatra in, there was no more Nat King Cole,
Hmm.
and there would be no Capitol Records. And I look at that and I think of all of the different industries that grew just from one person of color that was, they stuck with whatever it was that they needed to stick with to make it successful. Henry Ford. Henry Ford didn't create the car. He created the model of an assembly line, but it was a black man that decided as he was working, it would be better if each person had a part.
Hmm.
Credit for that. He did not make the car. So there's so many things that we're such an integral part of so many things. The golf tee, that is one of the richest games you can play. The golf tee was created by a black man. So when we do not own and we do not galvanize and we do not pull together to do these things that we need to do, our industries, they don't disappear, they just grow without us.
Right.
I was talking to a friend of mine, and even during this time of this pandemic, in the Mandarin language, Chinese, there's no word for crisis. The word crisis is opportunity.
Opportunity.
And we never think about that. For me, I wrote a script in 3 days. It took me a week to film it, and it made it into 2 film festivals. And it was just a short film, an idea that I had. And I thought about, wow, 3 days of me just buckling down and writing the script just off of an idea. And then in 5 days, orchestrating the entire filming with 3 locations we had, and then making it into 2 film festivals. And I said, can you imagine if we were all like laser focused with certain things, how much we can get done? We can get so much done. And one of the things I decided to do was to monetize my writing, put it into an online course. So that's where the Extreme Killer 3D writing course came from, because I said, I'm teaching and I'm writing and I'm producing, but what can I do that's evergreen that I can pass on to my kids that could live somewhere forever and me not have to run it? Because I think sometimes we get tired. We get tired because we have to physically be there. A good friend of mine, he's produced all of Kevin Hart's stand-up. And he was even in he was just one of our speakers for the Power Networking Conference with Dr. George C. Frazier. And I love the fact that he's mentoring college age men and how they can just have a balanced life and go to college. Like he's directing Kevin Hart. He doesn't have to do that, but he takes the time out. And that's such a great example to so many people that it doesn't matter where you are, what level you are, what you're doing. You can reach out, mentor someone, and get them to a place that maybe you weren't at their age. Help them to get to that place you should have been at, or maybe you were there and you want to continue that whole process. I believe in that. So I do online workshops. I teach writing. I teach how to develop your characters in 3 dimensions. I have projects that are coming up. I believe that we can do a lot. We talk about it, but I'm like, we can do a lot. I'm so proud of how far we've come. But can you imagine if we did that and we actually had a budget? Can you imagine if we actually had the money? I know people who throw away money day in, day out. It's no big deal, but we can do a lot. We can write, we can develop projects, we can direct, we can produce, we can executive produce. I've done projects like Zodiac Sign with Christopher Nolan out of Chicago. And when we did the screening for that, we took over the theater, like a good part of the theater, to do the screening. And everyone was like, oh, who's this? What is that backdrop? It's a Black film with Black actors that is directed by a Black director and they were like, wow, like it had never been done before, but it was independent. So it was an independent film that was being shown in a movie theater so that it could go on BET, so that it could go on Netflix, so it could go. So we have quite a few movies that have that kind of situation where you have to present in an actual theater before you can go on. Go into a theater. But it's so funny. I heard people complain recently. They said, how come Netflix, their original movies don't have to showcase in a movie theater before it hits Netflix? And they can and I said, because they own it. When you own it, you have a lot of control. You can decide what to do with yours in your own house. So if you want to do that, you've got to create your own platform. So there are platforms. There's, like I said, Quality TV and a couple of other networks that I'm not sure in terms of how much content they're looking for, but there are platforms that are looking for our content, and that's so important that people are looking for us and that they can actually find us,
Right.
they can find us. Yeah.
So tell us about the course. First of all, I don't know if it's just me with feedback. I'm hearing feedback continuously, but
I don't hear anything.
You don't hear? Okay, good. I hope nobody else hears anything. It's fine if it's just me. So can anybody be a writer, or are there some special skills that you should have coming into this?
Well, let me say it this way. Anyone can tell their story.
Okay.
Someone else may have to write it for them if they don't feel creative enough to use words that draw in the audience, but anyone can tell their story. Everyone has a unique story, and within your unique story, everything that's in your background is what really populates the grid of your story. Where are you from? Where are your parents from? What language do they speak? What special foods do they cook? What school did you go to? That's your unique story. Just like we have our own fingerprint, you have a story to tell. And I think people shy away from the writing part because they equate it to just going back to school, but not really. Not really. If you sit down and you say, I have something to offer my generation, and I have a story. I went through this, I went through that, I traveled here, I went there, I learned to cook this. I had an accident and now I had to relearn this. Everyone has a story. Does everyone
Mhm.
want to be a writer? Not necessarily, but there are people who have stories that could actually change their life.
Mhm.
When we finally get the story, when I finally saw Richard Pryor's story, Jojo Dancer, Your Life is Calling You. It was a tragic story. I'm really good friends with his daughter, but it was a tragic story. And when she tells the story about 5 people coming to his funeral, not after all that he's contributed. Richard Pryor contributed a lot. I mean, he was way above our time in terms of the PG aspect, but he contributed to entertainment. um he did so much.
Major milestones.
He
Yeah.
did so much, but when you see his life story and you see how he was raised in a brothel and his mother was a prostitute and he didn't know who his father was, everybody has a story.
Mhm.
So whether you write it and it's autobiographical, or someone else writes it biographical, or if you use parts of it and you put it into some form, whether it book, whether it be, some people, they tell their story through music. But everyone has a story to tell. So can everyone write? To some degree? Yes, to some degree. Some people have a strong gifting. They can throw together a romance novel, a drama, a comedy, mystery, sci-fi. I tend to love all those. And action, I write all those as well. But I think everyone has a story to tell.
Yeah, I would love to be a sci-fi writer. I would love to write like
It's
the
fun.
black version of Aliens or
It's fun.
Star Trek or something like that, and just put it
You
out
could.
there.
Well. I don't know how common this knowledge is, but Matrix and Terminator was written by a black woman, and it
Oh,
took
I
her
did not know
so
that. No.
yes, and it took her so long to sue the production companies that actually she came to them with her scripts. The Matrix was not just written by anyone. The Matrix was written by a black woman. And she
Wow.
finally, after, oh gosh, a good 15, 20 years of fighting them in court, she finally was able, because hers was called, Matrix was called The Third Eye.
Mhm.
Originally was called The Third Eye, and she finally won. And look at all the money that they've made.
Yeah.
Look at all of the money
Not
that
only
they
that, the missed
have.
opportunity for her, because if she were able to do subsequent movies and saying written by, the person who wrote The Matrix, all of a sudden, because that's how it happens, and all of a sudden your stock value goes up, you're able to sell your scripts for more money, etc. I have family members in the industry as well. One
Mhm,
who
mhm,
wrote a very famous Black movie. I
mhm.
can't say which one it is just for privacy purposes.
Sure,
They don't like me to put their information out there, but it's
sure.
something that everybody would recognize.
Right, right,
But because of that, she has relationships with everybody in Hollywood because she
right,
wrote this one movie, and she's
right.
been writing for many, many years. So,
Mhm.
um, so we talked about the business of writing, and anybody can do it. Tell us a little bit more about um, your course and how people
Sure,
can learn more about it.
sure. Well, I created the Extreme Killer 3D writing course. And the reason why is because a lot of times people will send me books or they'll say, can you preview this movie for me? And I noticed that sometimes people in a rush to finish a project, they don't fully develop the characters. And so you don't have like this draw to the character. You don't have this love for this character, even if they were the villain. You want to make sure that the characters are well rounded. Like I want to love and hate you at the same time. I want you did your job when they see you in the street as just the actor and they're just mad at you. Like I can't
Yeah,
believe you did
the
that.
actors, they slap them in the face like, I can't
Yeah,
believe you did that.
yes, yes. That's what you want. Because if you don't do that and the character kind of falls flat and you're just kind of disappointed, you want to create memorable characters. And if it's your autobiography, you want to be able to be so transparent and so vulnerable and so ready to just learn something, within the scene that everyone's like, oh gosh, I can't believe this happened. I know that I'm trying to think of one character in particular that I just fell in love with from the beginning. Actually, a simple one. The black version of Annie. That little girl, I fell in love with her. I can't pronounce her name. She has this long, interesting name. But the little girl who played opposite Jamie Foxx, I fell in love with her because she was believable. It didn't feel like conjured up. This was a little girl in a foster home.
Oh yeah, I
Parents
remember her
didn't like.
now. She has a very difficult name to say.
Yes, yes. I'm not even
Yes,
gonna try, but
yes.
I loved her and I fell in love with her immediately. And I felt like she was a perfect choice for the casting agency to present to the director and the producers. And when you have a character like that that you can fall in love with immediately, you know that no matter if the plot falls, you still are in love with that character. You want a great outline, you want a great storyline, you want the plot to be amazing. But if your characters fall flat, it's just the opposite. It doesn't matter how amazing everything is. If your characters fall flat, that is the lifeline of your story. That is the lifeline. And a lot of times people think they have to have like a lot of characters. Look at Castaway with Tom Hanks. It was just Tom Hanks and his ball, Wilson, two characters. You personified the ball because that was his friend, and you had Tom Hanks, who's this amazing actor. So right now, you're looking at it like, how could I like root for the ball? That is not a person. Another movie that I use for my course that I love is Tap. I go back to the 80s because that's a time where people really had to be on point with their craft. His tapping became a person. His tapping was personified. It took on a life of its own. And you mentioned what I wanted to mention when you talked about Debbie Allen coming on the second season of A Different
A
World.
different world.
Debbie Allen was heavily involved in, we go back to Fame. If anyone has ever worked with her, and I worked with her years ago, I love her and Felicia Rashad. Um, they understood how important representation was, and that's what made it work. They understood how important it was for us to be seen, all of us. They fought for the Kim character. She fought for the Kim character. Not everyone is this complexion, not everyone's even lighter. We're a mix, we're a range, we're an array of colors, and they fought for her to have that representation. And people don't realize how important that is for little girls and little boys to see themselves. So in my course, I teach you how to write full, the well-developed characters. That it's like it's almost like having a ball. And if you're looking at the ball like this, you see it. But when you turn this, you see it. When you turn like this, you see it. You're well developed. And that's what the course is about, having fully developed characters that do not fall flat, and that I teach you how to have fun while creating them. So you watch movies, you read excerpts from books, you look at TV shows, you look at and you study, because that's how I was trained as a director. You have to look at the whole picture, and you have to be able to say, this piece fits, this piece fits, this doesn't fit. Okay, we need to shine this up a little bit. Okay, let's hold this up a little higher. And that is really how we are. We're not flat human beings. So when you write a character, create a character, develop a character, it cannot be flat. So the 3D writing course is a 4-week course. Um, I have tons of material in there. The modules are amazing. And I'm not just saying it because I wrote it, but I've done my beta testing when it first came out. And I think what people realize is that if you don't create a character like it's a living human being, when you present this script to an actor and they're reading it, you're making them do all the work of developing the character. And when you do that, it becomes theirs. And it's no longer your work that they are embodying, it's their work. You want to be able to control, not that you don't want them to come to the table with something, but give them so much that they can cherry pick and they can really develop this character. And so this 4-week course is a way for people to write their story, or to write something that's fictional, write something that's non-fictional. If it's self-help, it helps you to kind of develop a strategy of how you're going to attack your book, and really give it substance. Because self-help doesn't just mean, okay, you just give me a list of rules. This has to be tangible. It has to be something that I can walk away with and say, yes, I feel fully equipped to create this project. So it's for everyone. And I love the fact that you asked me, can anyone be a writer? Because I think that depending on what field you're in, if you're able to articulate what you need to say well, if you can articulate well, this will help you to really speak your piece. Say what you need to say. You go into a business meeting, you need to be able to say what you need to say. And a lot of times I think people hide or are scared of big words. You don't need to have or use big words all the time in order to express yourself. You can use words that they call them $10 words, and then there's $50 words. If you're really good at $5, $10 words and you use them well, it'll look like it's a 50. It'll look like it. But I'm really into that. So my course is it enables you to write for stage, film, or books. So I was very specific about that, because if you're not a playwright and you're not writing for stage, then what? If you're not a film director and you're not writing scripts, then what? If you're writing a book and you don't know which way to go, I wanted to make sure I covered all three. And if you are someone who feels you're going to do public speaking and eventually do a book, it's perfect too, because now you know when to tell your story. People tell stories and they come out flat because they only tell you what happened to them. They don't tell you what happened through them. What was the outcome of that? This person was raped or molested or something happened. Now, not just happened, what happened to you, but what happened through you, what happened through your story, what happened through the situation, and if you don't know that, you can't really fully express what people need to know and hear and see and do with your story.
Yeah.
They'll
So I've been studying a lot of marketing lately through a guy named Russell Brunson, and
Yes.
he talks about hook, story, offer. And the story, he often says, is the biggest thing and it's the hardest thing. So even if people are business people, like you had mentioned, whether you're a speaker, whether you're a salesperson, whether you're an entrepreneur trying to get somebody to give you a contract, big or small, having people, sorry, my dog is at the front door, having people actually, hear your story,
Right.
and understand, why they should purchase from you is so important. So
Yeah.
I'm going to let you tell everybody how to get your course while I go let them in, and I'll be right back.
Okay, should I drop it in the chat too? Okay,
Yeah,
so
you drop it in the chat.
Yeah, I'm gonna drop it in the chat for you guys. I'm actually going to do something special for Cyber Monday, because what I want to do is make sure that anyone who wants to write a book or anyone who wants private coaching, that you reach out to me. So this is the website, and I'm going to put my email in here as well, because I do believe that a lot of people can write. They don't necessarily know how to write their story, so they may want to start off with like a children's book or some idea, something that would help them to start the process of writing this story. So I'm going to put this in here for you guys. Trying to talk and type, that's weird. All right, so let me just put this in here. But this is awesome. I'm putting my email in here as well, because I am going to do something for Cyber Monday. I'm going to be releasing that, and I'll put my Instagram and information there. But yeah, definitely. I think that it's important for people to understand that they do have a story, even if they're afraid to tell it. And we say that all the time, that it's the story that you're afraid to tell is the one that will change your bank account. It definitely will. It will change your bank account. On Facebook, it's just.
I agree with that.
It will. It will. And that's Facebook.
All right. Well, we had fun today, Veronica, saying as a writer myself, I find people are afraid of exposing themselves, and sometimes it's not what you think. And I saw Neil in our Facebook group. Kwavanjane Wallace was the Black Annie. Kwavanjane Wallace.
Well, Vanjane,
Yes.
I didn't want to mess that up. She's so
Yes,
cute.
he wrote it out for all of us here.
Thank
So
you.
we
She's
want
so
to
cute.
thank everyone for being here today with us. This is a very important conversation we have had. We've also spoken with Monique because when we started talking about the 10K project and we started talking about the different industries that we wanted to potentially focus on, Monique was the one that was adamant about entertainment. She's like, no, 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 you're missing it. So she
Yes.
had to sell me on it, but she did.
Awesome.
So we are going to be looking at entertainment as one of the industries that, if, again, I'd say it because we're all over social media, if
Right.
the government gives us the check mark and we're able
Right.
to do the equity crowdfunding, that will most likely be one of um, the industries we focus on
Industries.
with regards to what we call anti-leakage. Anti-leakage is a fancy term for, right now, 98% of the money that flows through Black businesses, 98% ends up going out to other businesses to pay for
Yes.
supplies and things like that. So we need to reduce that number significantly, and the 10K project is going to focus on a certain portion of the businesses being what we call the anti-leakage businesses. So if and when we get approval from the government, we will be coming out with our economic report, and it will be done by Eddie the Economist and Monique and Tawana and Talisha and I to talk about our 25-year plan for the 10K project. So, and Tawana's saying thank you, Monique. She is
Thank you.
in Facebook. So want to thank everyone for being here today. Yes, so Veronica saying don't sleep on the arts. So
Do not.
we want to thank everyone for being here today. Definitely take a look at Monique's course, especially, don't just think about it for playwright and book and writing film. Think about it for business as well. I might take a look at it myself because I do want to become a better storyteller for the 10K project as well as all the other stuff
Definitely.
that I do. So I want to thank everyone. Thank you, Monique, for being here
Thank
today.
you.
And
Thank
we will
you.
see everybody tonight. We do have another session for members only. If you guys want to come to it, check your emails and we will give you that information. Thanks,
Awesome.
everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.